There is a body benefit. God designed us to function and to flow within a body. Like we said, that body could be a family, that body could be a community, a neighborhood, it could be a church, it could be a job, it could be some other type of organization. But He designed us to be in a body in every one of those arenas, in every one of those aspects. We are not islands to ourselves. Though we do need to be established in our individual identity, that prepares us to be able to join with others and create the benefit of the body. Hello and welcome to The Journey. I'm Aurora and I'm so glad that you're joining me here today. We are still on the topic of identity, but we're going to connect that topic in with another one. I had this phrase come to my mind the other day, and it was the body benefit. The body benefit. There is a benefit that God has given us. He created us to live, flow, and function within a body, not as isolated individuals only, but to come together and to form unity and oneness as a body. But in order to do that, in order to come together as a body in a healthy way, I believe, and from my experience, I found that it is most beneficial to me and most healthy for me and those around me if I'm first confident and settled in who I am, in my own identity that God has given me. And when I am settled in that, then I can move more fully and more freely and in a more healthy way in connection with others. So one day I was sitting and I was just spending time with God, and I had this overwhelming sense of being part of His great plan. And so I just threw my head back and I said, Lord, thank you so much for making me part of your great plan. And as I did that, I just focused on Him and I opened up my heart so that He could speak back to me on the matter, and He did. And it was wonderful. And I'm going to share that with you in just a second. But before we do, I just want to frame this up a little bit with a little bit of a passage from 1 Corinthians chapter 12. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, starting at verse 12, just as the human body is one, though it has many parts that together form one body, so too is Christ. For by one Spirit we were all immersed and mingled into one body. And no matter our status, whether we are Jews or non-Jews, oppressed or free, we are all privileged to drink deeply of the same Holy Spirit. In fact, the human body is not one single part, but rather many parts mingled into one. So if the foot were to say, since I'm not a hand, I'm not part of the body, it's forgetting that it is still a vital part of the body. And if the ear were to say, since I'm not an eye, I'm not really part of the body. It's forgetting that it is still an important part of the body. Think of it this way. If the whole body were just an eyeball, how could we hear sounds? And if the whole body were just an ear, how could it smell different fragrances? But God has carefully designed each member and placed it in the body to function as He desires. A diversity is required, for if the body consisted of one single part, there wouldn't be a body at all. So now we see that there are many different parts and functions, but one body. So God has created us as a body, but each one of us has a divinely crafted, uniquely assigned role given by God within that body. And so let's have that in mind as we're sharing this. I was talking to God about how I really felt like I was part of His plan, and there wasn't anything specific going on. I just had that knowing on the inside. I was like, woo, I'm part of something bigger. I'm part of something greater. And I could feel that and sense that within myself. And I was just really appreciating God for that at the moment. And when I did, He started to speak back to me on the matter. And what's so fun about talking to God is we think we're talking to God about one thing, but then when He starts to speak to and prompt our heart, He can open up a whole nother dialogue, a whole nother conversation that we were not even expecting. And so that's what He did with me this day. And I'm not going to read it all because it's kind of lengthy, but also it was kind of personal as well. And so some of those personal statements that He was making to me, I will skip over those and just kind of try to hit on the main points that I feel like would be beneficial for everyone. So keep in mind, we're kind of hopping in the middle of a conversation here. But I'll start reading here. And this is what I believe that God has spoken to me as I was thanking Him and appreciating Him for making me part of His great plan. And He said, all can't be the same. That doesn't please me. Beauty in diversity, diversity in calling, creation, demeanor, and disposition. I made them all from the beginning. Learn how to fit together. Fit together like pieces in a puzzle. You like the hunt of finding the right pieces to go in the right places of your puzzles. Now, I like to do puzzles. So Jesus, when he was speaking in parables to the people, he would talk to them about sheep and coins and different things like that, because that's what they were able to relate to at the time. So God knows I like puzzles. I like putting puzzles together. That might not be your cup of tea, but that's the language he's speaking to me in, because he knows that I like puzzles. So he says, you like the hunt of finding the right pieces to go in the right places of your puzzles. Allow me to guide your hand, to form your process. I know what fits together. Each piece has protrusions and indents. This allows the pieces to come together and stay together, allows them to join. Otherwise, there would be no joining factor. One move and they would all come apart. You need each other. I didn't give all to any one person. Some have a little of this and a lot of that. Let those pieces fit together in your lives, and their much makes up your little. Your much makes up their little. What I have much of makes up the difference for what they have little of, and vice versa is what he's saying here. And in the end, all are one, a part of my great plan, my masterpiece. The joining requires respect, honor, love, and appreciation, not just for each other, but for me as well, for my craftsmanship and my design. Faith, understanding that one doesn't have it all, but God made up the difference by joining us with others. And I'm going to skip down a little further here. So he's telling us, he was speaking to me here about the benefit of the body, that I don't have to have all of something. I can have a part, but he designed us so that we can join and fit together, and that what I'm lacking is made up when I join with someone else, and what they're lacking is made up when I join with them. He's explaining to me the benefit, and he designed us that way. He created us that way. That was his design and his plan. So moving on a little further, he starts to give me some instruction about joining within a body. And he says, sometimes there are rough edges and it doesn't seem possible for pieces to fit together in harmony. Everything is a fight. Everything is a struggle, an argument. It's the process of joining, sliding pieces in place that helps scrape off those edges. It can be tense and painful, but it's part of the process. Don't quit. Don't lose faith or hope. Trust that the process is working. There will be a union. Life hurts sometimes and causes hearts to be rough and unyielding. Looking out for self makes it hard to truly join with others. The desire may be there, but the inner pliability and receptivity is not. Sometimes pieces are out of place until it is possible to even begin joining. Don't pull them in too quickly. Forcing by man's will can cause these to break and never seek to join with others again, causing them to feel they are doomed to isolation and independence. There is room for all. There is a plan for all. I am the master, the only one who can truly see and know all. Trust me and not your own understanding. Be sensitive with others and the work I'm doing in them, where they are at on their journey with me. You don't know all, and appearances can be deceiving. Trust my hand and my ability to draw in those who are ready for union. And so I sat back and I just soaked all this in, because I was expressing the fact that I was part of God's plan, and I was really appreciative of that. And so then he started to reveal to me some of the benefit of being a part of a body, and not only the benefit, but also some wisdom in going forward, because life sometimes can make us hard. Life sometimes can make us unpliable, kind of rigid, kind of stiff and apprehensive, but he gives wisdom for that. He says, take your time. Be patient. Let me lead you with those who you're to join with. Let me guide you. Don't try to jar in or push them into relationship or push them into union before they are ready, this can just cause more injury. So he's saying, let me lead you, let me guide you, be patient, take your time, and I will show you those that are ready to join in unity. And so we have this blessing, this understanding that comes from him. And it ties in with that passage that we just read from 1 Corinthians chapter 12. He is connecting the fact that we are one body, and each member of that body is different. We can't say because I'm not an eye, I'm not important. Because I'm not a nose, I don't have a part to play. And even on the flip side, I can't stand back and say because that person is not like me, they don't have a part to play. Because that person doesn't have the same gifting, calling, ability, talent, desires, things that make their motor run. Because they're different from me, they must be wrong. They must be inferior. There must be some kind of defect. No. 1 Corinthians 12 says that God is the one who sets us and gives us the part to play within his own body. He's the one who did it. How can a man criticize another man's servant? When we step back and look at others, we are able to have a heart of appreciation that says, Lord, they're different from me. And I don't fully understand, but I appreciate the fact that they were uniquely crafted and uniquely designed by you. And I want to look at another scripture. This jumped out to me the other day. I was just reading and I thought this was so good that they didn't leave this out. This was Galatians 2 and it was verse 8. And it says, for God who is at work in Peter as an apostle to the circumcised was also at work in me as an apostle to the Gentiles. And this was Paul speaking. And what he was doing was acknowledging that Peter was an apostle and he himself, Paul, was an apostle. But even though they both had a similar calling, they didn't have the same assignment. Paul says, I'm an apostle to the Gentiles. I'm an apostle to those that aren't Jews. But yet Peter, his assignment is to those that are circumcised, to those that are Jews. And isn't it wonderful that one didn't look at the other and say, wait a minute, I'm an apostle and this is what I'm doing. Therefore, if you're going to call yourself an apostle, you need to be doing what I'm doing as well. No, they gave space for the difference. They gave space for the calling. They were able to step back and say, we have similarities and we can join in on those things, but we also have differences and we can celebrate those differences and leave room for the other person to follow the calling and the assignment and the purpose that God has on their life without them interfering and trying to draw them into their own lane. Rather, they stayed in their own lanes and they appreciated and they supported one another in their own unique call. Here's another part that I want to read. And this has more to do with the identity factors. We've been talking about identity as we go along. And the way I understand identity to be important when it comes to being able to join with a body is because if I move into a community relationship, a community setting, and I don't really know who I am, I could be tempted then to just take on the identity of the group that I'm in. And as we talked about that before, sometimes that is helpful, especially when we're still trying to figure things out. We're growing, we're learning, we're discovering. But when we do come to a place where that identity, we've had the opportunity to establish that, it helps for that to be established before we move in, before we join in with particular groups and with particular bodies, because then we're not tempted to forsake who God has made us to be and just take on the identity that's coming from the outside just for the sake of fitting in and just for the sake of being able to move along and get along with others. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not a place for being able to fit in. Sometimes we do need to do that, but we don't want to live our whole life in every setting where we're never really having a free expression of the identity that God has given us. And it's not a selfish thing. It's a matter of wanting to glorify God and wanting to honor our own life and the life that he's given us by living genuinely. It's a desire that he put on the inside of each one of us. It's a desire for freedom and a desire for expression for who God created us to be. He didn't give us that identity for us to throw it away or to surrender it under a false identity that's coming from the outside. So if I know who I am and I'm comfortable in that, then when I move into a body setting, a group setting, a community setting, I am more comfortable becoming a part and joining with others because I have the foundation laid within myself already. And I'm not at high of a risk of taking on someone else's identity. At the same time, When I know who I am and I'm comfortable in that, I can leave room for other people to be who they are. I don't need them to be like me in order for me to be comfortable. I don't need them to come join me in what I'm saying, join me in what I'm doing, join me in what I'm believing. I don't necessarily need that. We can be different and still be amongst one another. Now, it will affect the degree to which we're able to join and link up, and that's okay. Everybody's not going to join to the same depth and degree as the next person. But when we are coming to those settings already affirmed in our identity, we're at less risk of losing who we are and also trying to impress upon other people who they should be. We should be who God has designed us to be, and we should allow others to be who God designed them to be, and celebrate the differences and celebrate the similarities and honor and acknowledge God as the one who gives them all for the benefit of what? His body, and that benefits us. That is the body benefit. See, if I try to make the next person to be like me, then guess what? Something is missing from the body. If I take on someone else's identity and try to do things exactly the way they do them, something ends up missing from the body, and some of the benefit is lost. But the benefit of the body is the many that are different coming together to become one. Then everything that's needed is within, because God has provided it that way. Sometimes we look around and we think, oh, what's missing? What's missing? Really, nothing's missing. God has given us everything we need. But have we come to the point where we're able to freely and confidently express and live out our own unique identity? And not only that, but accept, love, celebrate the unique identity that God has placed on others as well. So I want to read this really quickly, and this will be the last that we touch on, but it's so good we just have to read it. This is John chapter 1, and I'm going to start here at verse 19. Now this was John's testimony when the Jewish leaders in Jerusalem sent priests and Levites to ask him who he was. They want to know his identity. They're asking him, who are you? He did not fail to confess, but confessed freely, I'm not the Messiah. They asked him, then who are you? Are you Elijah? He said, I'm not. Are you the prophet? He answered, no. Finally, they said, who are you? Give us an answer to take back to those who sent us. What do you say about yourself? John replied in the words of Isaiah the prophet, I am the voice of one calling in the wilderness, make straight the way for the Lord. Isn't that fantastic? Part of knowing who we are is also knowing who we're not and not having a problem saying that. These men were pressuring him. They were important people coming. You need to give us an answer so we can go back and tell those people who you are, because people are wanting to know your identity. But part of John knowing who he was him knowing who he was not. And he was able to boldly and freely say, I am not the Messiah. See, if he didn't know who he was, which he's going to show us later that he did know who he was, but if he didn't know that, he might have been tempted to say, oh, yeah, I'm the Messiah, looking for accolades, looking for a place, looking for some kind of praise from the people. But he didn't even stumble over that. He's like, no, I'm not the Messiah. Are you the prophet? No. He said, are you Elisha? I'm not even Elisha. He had no problem saying what he wasn't. But then when they asked him, who are you? Give us your answer. And John replied saying what? We talked about this in a previous video. He replied saying, I am. I am. John was freely able to say, I am. And since he knew who he was able to also say who he was not. But then we're able to see when John talks about Jesus in verse 26, let's read that. John says, I baptize with water. John replied, but among you stands one you do not know. He is the one who comes after me, the straps of whose sandals I am not worthy to untie. So not only was John able to say who he wasn't, he was able to say who he was. And look at what else, and this is so wonderful, what else he was able to do. He was able to celebrate who Jesus was. Now, the rest of them were not acknowledging Jesus as the Messiah. This was part of John's job. This was part of his assignment, was to identify the Lamb of God who comes to take away the sins of the world. Part of his calling, his assignment, was to identify the Messiah. So the rest of the people didn't know it at the time. So really what he was saying was kind of risky. But he was only able to do that because he was firmly established in who he was. And when we are firmly established in who we are, we won't be tempted to take on false identity as much, at least. We won't be as tempted to force other people into an identity that we think that they should have. And we also will be able to celebrate others. We'll be able to give accolade, to give praise, to give acknowledgement to others. That can be a struggle, because if we're still kind of working that thing out, which we probably will be for the rest of our lives, but at least if we get it to a place where we're settled enough to where it's not taking away from me and who I am to acknowledge who another person is. And if we find ourselves where that is a challenge, that's okay. That's where we just say, help me, Lord. I'm on the journey. I'm on my way, and you're walking with me, and you are helping me. So I just wanted to hop on and share that with everybody today. There is a body benefit. God designed us to function and to flow within a body. Like we said, that body could be a family. That body could be a community, a neighborhood. It could be a church. It could be a job. It could be some other type of organization. But he designed us to be in a body in every one of those arenas, in every one of those aspects. We are not islands to ourselves. Though we do need to be established in our individual identity, that prepares us to be able to join with others and create the benefit of the body that God designed for us to have. So I bless you today. I thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you, and I pray that I'll see you again on our next episode. God bless you. Bye-bye.